Hi guys, welcome back to another whiteboard session. Next step in our programming journey is looking at some essential programming rules. Now this is probably more focused at our resistance-based training sessions, so our strength-based training sessions. Remembering back to the previous video, I'd had listed as one of the first steps in programming is understand what the desired adaptation or the physical change that wants to happen in the body from this client. So again, going down the path of saying, does the client want motor skill development, which is technique, they want to learn how to do things properly, or are they looking for max power or max strength, as an example. Okay, once we've got that embedded in, we've gone through those 4 steps. The next thing, when I'm starting to get into a bit more specifics around exercise selection, etc., would be our first rule of programming being sequencing. So what do we put in first, second, third, fourth, etc., and why? Okay, so there's some basic rules that we ask everyone to follow in their basic programmings to start with, whether that's how you train in your own training program or not. We need to be able to follow some basic rules before we get any more advanced, so you can justify those programs. So a compound movement being more than one joint moving at a time. So a bicep curl would be one joint, a shoulder press would be 2 joints. So bicep curl, elbow joint moving, shoulder press, shoulder and elbow moving. So that would be the definition of a compound. We want to see that all of your compound movements are programmed first for these basic programs. We then, once we've followed all of our compound movements and we've got a good looking program and there's still time, we might put in some isolation movements. So again, we've done our priority movements being our compounds, and then we might finish off the session with some, I don't know, bicep work or tricep work, etc. Okay, if there's still time and you've chosen to use compounds and isolation so far and there's still time, then you might hit the client with a little bit of core training to finish it off. Remember that you don't have to include isolations if it's not part of your programming. If you don't have time, you thought you'd be better served to, have some really good compound movements and a bit of core, then that's fine. I'll put some asterisks here beside, and that is 1, what is the most energy demanding exercise? So to understand things like upper versus lower body, the lower body is a bigger group of muscles and would require more energy to complete a similar type movement, like a leg press versus a bench press. Okay, and the next part of the ruling is the complexity. If I use, say, a deadlift, which could be heavy, versus a clean and jerk, or just the clean component. The clean is very complex to be executed. So if I was to do a heavy deadlift before a heavy clean, okay, I'm going to be compromised potentially in my form because I have fatigue in those similar muscles. My choice would be to do the clean first. It is more complex. It could be equally energy demanding, but the complexity and the risk of injury is much greater in the clean. So I would choose to do that first. Okay, and the third part could be that it's just purely their priority. They prioritize doing one exercise over the other within reason. So we're not saying we're prioritizing doing our bicep superset curls before I go off and do a heavy pull up or lat pull or something. You're going to pre-exhaust some of those muscles. So yeah, there are exceptions to the rules as we get into the more advanced clients, but for the basic level, choose that. One thing I would say with sequencing is if you've got a beginner, maybe don't do all of your sort of lower body compounds first and then do the upper body compounds. It might get a bit too much demand on one part of the body. Okay, the next part is program balance. So is it balanced from a perspective of not like can they walk along a balanced beam? I mean, is it balanced between upper and lower body? Or are they walking around with tiny stick leg, thin legs and big lats and pecs? Are they just forgetting to train legs? We'd have a bit of a laugh at that. Okay, but upper and lower needs to be balanced and even. Pushing and pulling needs to be balanced and even. Maybe if you're doing a vertical push like a shoulder press, then maybe do a vertical pull to oppose that like a lat pull down. Or conversely, the horizontal, so a chest press versus a seated row. Match up compounds or oppose compounds versus compounds. So again, if I'm using those upper body movements, if I'm doing a chest press, okay, that is a push movement in the upper body, it is compound, then offset that with a compound movement in the upper body in the pulling pattern. So rather than going bicep curl is an upper body pull, yes, you're correct, okay, but it's an isolation movement. Offset isolations with isolations, oppose compounds with compounds, it'll be much more balanced, okay? If you're doing it in one program, absolutely we want to see a balanced approach. If you've got multiple sessions in a week, then you're well within your rights to, as long as in the week it balances out. Okay, so if you're thinking you'll have a push day, then for sure, you've got all your push movements. It's not going to be a balance of push and pull, or your upper body day might be not balanced until later in the week. But over the week, they do balance out. Okay, the last rule is that the variables match the client and the training type. Okay, so if the client is a beginner, then they need to train in a certain way. They're probably doing some technique, motor skill work, and maybe a bit of general strength. The tempos, the load, the rest, the reps, the sets will look very different to that of someone who's doing heavy power training in the gym. So the heavy power client might be doing 3 to 5 reps with 3+ minutes rest, and they're only doing the concentric drive phase really explosively. Okay, that is not how we would train our beginner. Our beginner would need to do higher rep ranges, like 12 to 15 for motor skill development, at much lighter loads, at much more controlled tempos like 2-0-2-0, and they probably don't need as much rest. They don't need 3 to 5 minutes rest for ample energy replenishment. Okay, they haven't been sapped that much of energy. Okay, they can back it up maybe after 60 seconds or 90 seconds. Okay, but know the variables that have been advised to you in your assessment logbooks, etc., and they should match the client type or the training age and the training type. Okay, so that's a little thing about programming rules. I hope that is helpful.